I chose it because I think it's a really nice piece of artwork for a very young girl did this. And I think that most of us would agree that you don't learn to do this kind of art in just one fell swoop, right? Usually, you learn to do any of those things in life, step by step by step, little bitty baby steps on the way to your desired goal. So that's what we're doing with this book. By the end of the semester, you're going to look at that big psych book and you're going to say, wow, look at how much I've learned. It would not be a good idea for me just to say, okay, learn that whole book right now. Right? That's too much. So whether it's learning to snowboard or learning to do a drawing like this or learning any of those other tasks in life, usually we do it step by step.
What about someone who's born with natural talent, like naive artists, who can automatically just do it just by perception?
Oh yeah, but you know, those are special cases. We're talking about the norm. The average individual has to learn things little by little. And now even if you were an artist who was born with this talent, like sometimes you'll see very young children who could draw incredible things. There are probably other things in their life that they had to learn step by step. You know, kind of like running a marathon. Nobody goes out and runs 27 miles at one time, right? You build up to it. So, that's why I chose this drawing. Now, the definition of learning is that it isn't just something academic. And I know when I say the word learning, most people right away you think of school. But the definition is a relatively permanent change in your behavior, your attitude, or your perspective that cannot be attributed to illness, injury, or maturation. So maturation is when your body just gets older. So like, say, going through puberty. You don't learn that. You can't make it happen faster or slower. It's just when your body is ready. Now you can learn how to deal with puberty, but not actually produce puberty itself. So this definition says that you have to have an experience in order to have learning occur. And so that's what we're going to be talking about. Now this chapter is from the perspective of the behaviorists. If you think back to chapter 1, where you had the different perspectives in psychology, remember there was the humanistic perspective, the cognitive perspective. Well, this is the behaviorist perspective. And they're all about the environment and changing the environment through reward and punishment, and therefore getting really basically what they want. I know that this is not the most exciting chapter to read. How many of you have read the chapter already? Okay, we got one person. Thank you. How many of you have actually looked at the slides? Okay. What you'll find is if you read the chapter and you look at the slides together, it makes the classroom learning much, much easier. Because you kind of already know what's coming and you know what parts you didn't understand. You know how to answer questions. So it's very helpful for you to come, you know, to class already having done that. So, the behaviorists you're going to find are very particular about the use of their words. Their language is very, very specific. And they have very specific definitions for each word they use. And they're very strict about it. But that precision makes it so that they are able to accomplish an inordinate amount of good in the therapy. Like, they're not at all interested in, you know, what happened to you when you were growing up? Did your mother not like you? They don't care about that stuff. It's like, look, you got a problem, we're going to fix it. So we're going to do it in a couple of weeks' time. You'll be good to go. And I think today that's what most people want. You know, if you have an issue or a problem, you want it fixed, right? You want to get on with your life. You want to be happy. You want to be, you know, healthy. You want to be able to go to work and have a good job and enjoy your life. So that's why their definition of relatively permanent, maybe somebody read that and thought, what kind of language is that? Relatively permanent. How can it be relatively permanent? Isn't permanent permanent? Well, what they say is that everything about you is learned. So if you have anger management problems, you learned that one way or another. If you bite your nails, you learned that one way or another. If you're afraid of dogs, you learned that one way or another. So that learning will be permanent unless you actively do something to change it. And that's what they are all about teaching you how to unlearn the bad stuff you learned and relearn something better in its place. And they're very successful at doing that. So now I want to ask you, put a couple of things down here. Is pulling your hand away from a hot stove something that you learned?
No.
No, because it's a reflex. Right, right. Remember we talked about reflexes? Okay. What about not touching the hot stove a second time? Definitely. Unless you're a slow learner, and then it might take, you know, most of us minutes is enough. What about coughing?
No.
Covering your cough? No. Yeah. Somebody probably coughed on somebody at one point to me. You gave me a dirty look like you said, cover your cough. What about gaining 5 pounds?
Not in any situation.
Well, do you have to learn to put on weight?
If you're like a wrestler or something.
No, not the behaviors, actually weight gain.
Oh, no.
No. No. Eating healthy?
Right.
Memory?
No.
Remember to do your homework?
Yes.
Understanding the concept of time.
Yes.
No, actually not. What people, humans, are born with the understanding of time and place. So nobody has to teach you that. They have to teach you the words like yesterday, tomorrow, but you know that you're here and you're here now.
What about the concepts of like linear and then I think the other one, like of time, where time is like either straight or it's like all already happened, they're all going on at once.
Those are all intellectual concepts.
What are those concepts of time?
Yeah, I guess.
So could we have to learn those?
I don't think you have to learn them, but I think that you have to learn the language to explain them. So I don't think that a lot of people can explain the concept of time, even though they understand it. It's kind of like one of those things that we say are ineffable. Like, you know what it is, you just can't like find the words to say it. You know, colors are a great example. For a sighted person, a person who, you know, has always had sight, you know what the color orange looks like. You can't explain orange without using something else as a reference. Well, orange is like that backpack, or orange is like a sunset, or orange is like, well, if somebody's never seen you know, to a blind person, what does that mean? Or you'll say, well, orange is kind of warm. That doesn't really adequately explain orange, right? So I think that's what you're talking about. But certainly knowing how a watch works, is that learned?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to get at is that anything that you're born with, or anything that is a reflex, those things are not learned. The only things that are learned are behaviors, attitudes, thoughts that you accumulate over a lifetime. Okay. If you open your books, oh, first I'll talk about Medina. You don't have this slide. This is just something I wanted to talk about. This is from a book called Spark. BDNF is a protein, and you make it in your head. It is a protein that makes learning easier. And I know, people probably, I think, oh, can I get it at GNC? Or, does my doctor have to prescribe it? No, you can actually just make it on your own. It's like super simple. What we know is that most of the time we're on autopilot. So let's say you're going to do your homework. So you sit down, you open the book, you start reading. Well, then pretty soon you're looking out the window, getting up to make a sandwich. Because you have not ever directed your behavior. However, if you say to yourself, I am going to pay attention, not only do you start producing the BDNF, but you sort of set a path for yourself. So if you sit down, you open your book, and you say to yourself, I am now going to pay attention. It's like a train going on tracks, and it really does work. Another thing that will help produce BDNF is exercise and sleep. And we talked about that already in chapter 2, didn't we? We said that you need to have sleep and exercise to keep a healthy brain, but it's not just to keep a healthy brain, it's to actually help you be smarter, to help you learn more easily, and to better remember things. Because when we do the memory chapter next week, you'll see that when you're sleeping, your memories consolidate. They like stick in your head, and you need them to do that. Another thing is, a study was done with people, 2 groups. One group walked for 20 minutes in a park. The other group walked for 20 minutes a day in a rural setting, like walking down Garfield or something. But both groups were outdoors. Both groups walked for 20 minutes a day. Both groups had the same fresh air, same food. It was a well-controlled study. And what they found was that the people who walked in a park-like setting could learn material faster, and they could understand it better, and they could remember it longer than the people who did the same kind of exercise, but on a busy street. And what they think is that, your brain is busy enough on its own. When we talked about dreams, remember we said you go to sleep and your brain is still working? Well, sometimes your brain just needs to calm down. So when you're walking and it's a natural setting, there is something very calming about that to humans. And again, maybe one of those things that we can't always put words to, but you just know when you kind of like settle down. It's restful to be in that sort of setting. When you're walking down Garfield, it's not so much. Because, right, the cars are going by and somebody's almost in an accident and then a truck zooms by you and startles you. And so your brain is probably moving faster, when you're walking on Garfield, then it would be just exercising on a treadmill. So, where am I going with this? What I'm saying is that when you're studying, how simple this could be for you. First of all, give yourself this suggestion that you're going to pay attention, and then don't sit there for 3 hours and wear yourself out. You know, after 15 or 20 minutes, when you start feeling like you need a little bit of a break, go outside for 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be a half hour. Go outside for 5 minutes. Go walk around your backyard, or if it's winter, go out, you know, and walk in the snow for 5 minutes. And then come back and study for another 20 minutes or half hour. And you'll see it next week that that's actually how the brain works best. So I just wanted you to have this information right now, because it has to do with learning. A mnemonic is a memory aid. And what you're going to find is that in talking about memory next week, there's a lot of words that start with an M, and they are pronounced with an N. And it's just because it comes from the Greek word for memory. Okay, so a mnemonic is a memory aid. What was the mnemonic that you used to remember the 4 reasons why we study psychology? It was a word, a made-up word, and then there was a sentence too that you could use. Yes.
Influence, prediction,
Yeah.
expectation, and...
No, wait. What's the mnemonic? How do you remember them, first of all?
I don't know, I just try to remember everything.
Oh, okay. So, yes, one was description. That was the D. Then there was explanation. And then the one that started with P is
I
prediction.
remember iPad, like I, what was the
Oh,
That's
okay.
all.
So you made up your own mnemonic.
Yeah.
That's fine. That's perfect. If it's personal to you, that's even better. What was the one we said in class?
So influence is the first one.
Yes, don't eat pizza indoors or deathly. Yeah. So it doesn't matter which one you use. I mean, whatever works for you, as long as you can remember it. So that's what, so I made up a mnemonic for the kinds of experiences that you can have that do give you learning. Okay? And some of these you're very familiar with. The first in the mnemonic is COCA. C-O-C-A. So the first C stands for consequences. The O stands for observation. The second C stands for cognitive. And the last one, the A, stands for association. I think that there's no question about how you learn through consequences, right? Can you give me an example? The behaviorists would say it's all because of reward and punishment. So can you give me an example of something you've learned because of its consequences? Yes.
Don't come home late or else I won't be able to go out the next day.
Great example, thank you. Yes.
Don't spend all your money on food if you can't fill up your car.
Yeah, another great example, yeah. So I think this is one that, most people, you get, right? I think you also get observation. You watch a model and then you figure, I can do that, right? And so you try to imitate what the model, bless you, has done. So do you have any examples of something you learned through watching?
Snowboarding tricks.
Do what?
Snowboarding tricks.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You watch an expert or a video or whatever, or somebody else doing it, and then you try to imitate them.
I learned piano by watching other people play.
Oh, very good. Very good. Yeah. I mean, and look at you. You all kind of look alike. You know, you learn how to dress. You learn what's appropriate for your age group or what's appropriate to wear to school. Right? Because you watch other people and then you imitate them. So we do learn a lot by watching and then doing. The cognitive one, we will talk about insight and latent learning. Language, you're probably familiar with. How do you learn through language? Not learn a language, but how do you learn stuff through language?
What we're doing right now.
Absolutely. Oh. Right. And also the book and the slides. So language that's written or spoken or signed, right, is another way that you learn. So that's why we say that children in the first 2 years of school, they learn to read, and after that, they read to learn. Because now you're depending on language to teach you all the other subjects, social sciences and all that. But the last one, learning through association, I think this is probably the one that, unless you've already had a psych class, this is the one that you probably have the least experience with. So this is the one that I'm going to start with. This is the one where you are going to produce a reflexive connection. Okay, let me take attendance first, and then we can we'll continue. Taylor Ames.